Welcome back to another episode of the Girl Boss Method podcast, hosted by myself, Ritu Bra. Now, this episode today is going to be all about calories and macros. So, obviously, when we're thinking about a fat loss or weight loss phase, we might be inclined to track calories and macros. So we're actually going to talk today a little bit about what calories and macros actually are, because we hear these terms thrown around, and especially if you have not had any coaching or education on these topics previously, you might not actually know what these things mean. So although the ladies inside my program, we work together one-to-one, and I'll educate them on what these are. I think it's also wise for me to also have something that they can understand what the calories and macros are. So if you are watching this video back, again, and you've got any questions, please shoot me a message, ladies. All right, so what are calories and what are macros? So we're going to start off with calories, okay? So calories is actually a form of energy. It's actually a unit measurement of energy in food. So if we think about what 1 calorie is, well, it's just an energy measurement. And this will make a little bit more sense when we start to understand, or I talk to you about what macronutrients are. You may have also heard the term micronutrients as well. We're not going to talk about that so much today, but just to give you a little broad understanding of what a micronutrient is. So you'll hear the terms calories, so that's energy. You'll hear the terms macronutrients. We'll go into a bit more detail on that in a moment. And micronutrients are nutrients that are actually required by the body in a micro format, so in a very small amount. So when we're thinking about micronutrients, we're actually thinking about things like vitamins and minerals, which are obviously very crucial for various body functions. But you know, they help provide a role or different roles. You know, you'll find that people often recommend to take like a vitamin supplement or something like that. So when we're thinking about vitamins, we're thinking about playing roles in helping our immunity, for example, and other, maybe even metabolism, maybe other various processes. And then the minerals are sort of more necessary for, again, things like fluid balance. We're thinking about you know, retaining or extracting fluids, like so literally bone health as well. And again, other functions. So we're not going to dive into that today, but we just wanted to talk about calories and macronutrients. So again, just taking it back to calories, it's what our food is measured. Okay, so obviously the more calories you're going to have, it's more energy, which if you're not using that energy, you will likely start to put on or store body weight. And calories are not just to do with, you know, energy that we, you know, when we're thinking about activity or physical movement and that sort of things. It's actually really, it can actually be very important for things like breathing, and actually just even maintaining bodily processes. So it's just really important for us to find the right balance when it comes to calories. So you'll often hear the terms, you know, like, for example, with the government recommendations that a man should have 2,200 calories per day, and maybe they'll throw out that a woman needs 2,000. Well, unfortunately, that's not just, you know, this is what a man needs and that's what a woman needs. It's very specific to the individual. So we do think about, when we're thinking about calories, we're actually, when I prescribe you calories, we are actually thinking about your daily needs, so your physical needs throughout the day. So it's going to vary dependent on whether you have like a sedentary job or you have a more active job, or if you're someone that has exercise that requires a lot of calories. So if we're thinking about people perhaps maybe into their marathon training, and again, yes, calories are actually really important for making sure that you have a great gym lifting workout as well. And there's also when we're thinking about fat loss and weight loss, quite often people are looking for the burn of the calories. And when we're thinking about that, ideally, we want to make sure we've got the right balance. You never want to be in a position where you're having so little in terms of calories that your energy is really compromised. We want to be able to perform our daily tasks, our job roles, perform exercise as well. And the key thing here, ladies, is I'm always going to say this, that even when we are looking at creating a deficit, a calorie deficit to, when we're thinking about a calorie deficit, we want to ensure that it's not, right, yes, ignore that. That's what happens when you don't have your phone on silent. It just goes off. So where was I? We're thinking about calories, we're thinking about energy, and we want to be able to perform our daily tasks. And when we're thinking about, deficits, we want to make sure that we are still able to perform at an optimal level without compromising everything else. And then just obviously with that in mind, that that's going to help us create the fat loss or the weight loss that we're looking at doing. So hopefully I haven't rambled on too much about what calories are per se. Again, if you've got any more questions about what your target calories should be, or how things are going to change as you go through the program, then obviously just reach out to me after watching this training. But yes, again, calories, they're important for all sorts of bodily functions, breathing, digestion, physical activity, even maintaining body temperature. But of course, when we're thinking about fat loss or weight loss, for example, we are thinking about more about how to use them, and also creating that tiny bit of deficit. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about macronutrients here. That's it. Okay, so macronutrients, we've talked about micro very, very quickly, but macronutrients, if you think about the top umbrella term here, this will split three ways. So macronutrients will split into proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Now, when we are thinking about the calories that correlate to these macronutrients, we're thinking about how many units of energy or how many units of that calorie goes towards protein or goes towards carbs or goes towards fats. Okay, and when you're thinking about, when I've prescribed you with calories for either they're a target for you to go for that fat loss, weight loss, or even if we're trying to build muscle or we're trying to increase your calories, we're also thinking about how these correlate or how they relate to the proteins, the carbs, and the fats. So protein, for example, carries 4 calories per unit of protein. Okay, so for every 1 gram of protein, we are looking at 4 calories, and the same will be said for carbohydrates. So for carbohydrates, for every 1 gram of carbohydrates, we are looking at 4 calories again. When it comes to fats, we're actually looking at 9 calories per 1 gram of fat. So obviously, when you look at it like that, you know, fats are obviously a lot higher. And, you know, when we're thinking about, you know, the fat loss or the weight loss, for example, we might favor proteins and carbs. Now, you might think that's quite funny because out there, you know, whether it's on Google or it's Men's Health magazine or whatever it is, or Women's Health magazine, or Instagram, for example, whatever it is that you're looking at, you'll often hear this myth about cutting carbs. So, for example, when we're thinking about carbs often, you know, they help us retain water. So when we actually cut or drop carbs, we're actually expelling or reducing the water that we're having in our body, in our tissues. Okay, so that's quite often why simply a lot of people favor dropping carbs. But when we're thinking about gram for gram, carbohydrates and proteins are exactly the same amount of calories. What do you know? How about that? And then obviously fats is a little bit higher. Now, we can't cut fats out completely because fats are very important, but I'm going to go through the list here. So, for example, proteins, they are made up of amino acids. Okay, we're not going to scramble your brains too much because we will do separate trainings on each of these macronutrients just so that you've got some more in-depth knowledge to understand about these. But protein, quite simply, is very crucial for building and repairing our tissues. So, you know, when we're thinking about muscle, for example, and we're building or trying to retain lean muscle mass, we want to make sure that we've got that protein in, because if we're not bringing the protein in and you're just cutting your calories without considering protein, unfortunately, it's not going to happen at like a massive loss or really fast, but you will start to break down into muscle tissue and muscle reserves and that sort of thing. So we don't want that to happen. You'll also be compromising other processes that protein is important for example, supporting immune function. So believe it or not, if you tell me that you're a bit unwell at the moment, or you know, you're in a deficit and we're worried about you compromising your immune function, I'm going to tell you to keep your protein up. Protein powder, even adding protein powder when you're sick, is so important. It's so funny that we're always shooting for the micronutrients. They're so important. It's so important to get your vitamins in, but do not ignore how important protein can be as well. So it's you know, again, when we're thinking about protein sources, we're thinking about our meat, our fish, our eggs, our dairy products, our legumes. So we're thinking about beans and pulses, and you know, for the vegans like myself, we're thinking about like tofu or maybe even some mock vegan products there as well. So again, that's what we're thinking about when we're going to cut it there with protein for now. And when we're thinking about carbohydrates, that again is a great source of energy. It's often found in our fruits, our vegetables, our, you know, thinking about our rice, our grains, our potatoes. So again, when we're thinking about carbohydrates, they can be split again, and that can be split into simple and complex carbs. So don't get too confused about that. They're going to have, we'll do again a training a little bit more detail on carbs, especially when we're thinking about things like glucose, which yes, is used for energy. And then you're thinking about things like, you know, insulin or even insulin resistance or anything to do with that. We will go through some separate training on that. And yeah, so don't worry too much about the difference between them. But again, we like carbs because carbs are, you know, they when we take carbohydrate foods in, we allow ourselves to take in fiber, which is really important. And again, it's a great energy source. And do you know what? A lot of the best foods out there are carbs. So why do we want to cut them? And, you know, there are ways that we can tackle fat loss and weight loss, and you don't have to, you know, we can always have a priority over some nutrient or macronutrients over others, again, depending on your specific favors or favorite foods. Does that even make sense? But yeah, anyway. And then moving on to fats. Okay. So when we're thinking about fats are really important for hormonal health. You never want to cut fats out. They're important. They can actually provide you with energy. So you will obviously see that, you know, some people favor and they do quite well and they enjoy not having so much of the carbohydrates, which is totally fine as well. Especially when we're thinking about, you know, let's just put it in that we're talking about fat loss or weight loss here, but they might not want to have the carbohydrates. They want to save a bit more calories towards the fats. They like the foods that are more focused on fats and protein. You know, that's totally fine as well. As long as you are not completely cutting out carbs, we want to make sure we're still considering things like fiber, dietary fiber, which is really important. So fats provide energy. They're important for nutrient absorption. So we talked a little about the micronutrients, and we're thinking about our vitamins, which I'll, again, I believe we've done a training on this already. Please have a look within the app, within the membership there. You will find there is some training on vitamins as well. If there's anything else you want to know a little bit more about vitamins, we can do some more training on that. Again, I love putting content out for you girls. Absolutely. So yes, fats are actually important for absorption of some vitamins. They help create some insulation, protection, again, for our vital organs as well. We get various different types of fats. So we get saturated, unsaturated, trans. You know, you hear all these terms about healthy fats and unhealthy fats. Again, we'll go and do separate training on each of the macronutrients because there's so much to cover. And again, I love getting all your questions in so we can really dive into each of those separately. But for example, when we're thinking about our sources of mainly healthy fats, we are thinking about our nuts, our avocados, our seeds, even fatty fish, for example. But yes, the macronutrients cannot be ignored. These guys are going to be important when we are thinking about manipulating calories and creating that deficit where needed. Yes, they are all important. And, you know, we shouldn't really think about cutting either of those. We can always create, you know, like a more of a focus towards some more than the other, depending on the foods that you like and that sort of thing. So there will be a separate training on just a little demo on how to. So once you've had your calories set, your protein, your carbohydrates and your fats, once they've been allocated to you, you'll find them within the app. They'll be given to you. You want to drill those into another app called MyFitnessPal. So make sure you have downloaded MyFitnessPal. There are separate trainings as well on how to use MyFitnessPal. and we can actually go into MyFitnessPal. Firstly, you need to make sure that you make your account public so that I can view your MyFitnessPal diary. So by logging your foods into MyFitnessPal, it gives me data in the main app, in our main Girl Boss app, and that way we can kind of see overall over the days, the weeks, you know, how you're generally eating and what sort of, you know, are you in a deficit if needed, that sort of thing, and are you getting enough protein in, etc. Are you ensuring that you're maintaining a healthy level of fats, dietary, you know, fats within your diet, those sorts of things. And MyFitnessPal is such an amazing app because you're able to scan products and you're able to find lots of different foods on there. It's got one of the, I think it's probably the largest database when it comes to foods, food groups, products as well. So again, you can scan things. It's really, really cool. Please definitely have a look at some of the other MyFitnessPal trainings that we've done. And again, any questions, please ask in the group, please reach out. And yeah, I will leave you there with that. Any more questions, please send them away. And with that, we finish this training, and I hope to hear from you next time on the Girl Boss podcast.